Hi, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast. My name is Isabel Ross, and I'm the coach at Peak Endurance Coaching. Episode 59 is a bonus episode, and it's an interview with me. My good friend Nicole Kew interviews me to find out where I got my drive and passion for running and how I have developed my mental strength for running. Do you have injuries or niggles ruining your enjoyment of running and hindering your performance? Running is our time to focus on our health and our happiness, and if this time is plagued with aches and pains, it's really no fun at all. Come in and see the specialists at Health and High Performance, where they utilise the latest in technology and experience to help you achieve the results you want and are capable of. So head to healthhp.com.au/run or find them on Instagram, Health High Performance. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. Rating, reviewing and sharing helps more people find the podcast and grows the audience, which all helps when I'm trying to contact people to be interviewed. You can also, as you have now, come to the YouTube channel to check out the video recordings of the podcast interviews. I really hope you enjoy this interview that Nicole and I did. I was super nervous about it all, but I do hope that it gives you some insights into me as a person. In next week's episode, I chat with Andy Blow, one of the founders of Precision Hydration. We have a very interesting and informative conversation about the importance of hydration, obviously, and having a basic hydration race plan, as well as looking at the huge variety of conflicting advice that is out there, and there's a lot. You will learn a lot with this one. With so many restrictions in place, it's more important than ever to have a structured and individualised plan to ensure you maximise your training time. Races will eventually return, but in the meantime, there are many other challenges that you can find, like planning an FKT, for instance. If you need an individualised plan, email me, isabel@peakendurancecoaching.com.au, to chat about it and see what we can organise. Have a great week of training, stay safe and well, look after your loved ones, and remember, with a little kindness, grace and empathy, we will get through this together and come out the other side stronger and more resilient. Okay.
Hi, and welcome to the Peak Endurance Podcast. My name's Nicole Kew, and I'm taking over the podcast today, and I'm going to put Izzy in the interviewee chair, and I'm going to ask her a heap of questions so we can find out a little bit more about her. So, hi, Izzy.
Hi, Nicole. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to your own podcast.
Oh, I know. Thank you. It feels a bit weird being the one not asking the questions now.
Yeah, well, I thought all your listeners get to listen to you ask questions and have great conversations with all of your guests, but I wondered how many of them actually know about you, other than you, the person, other than, say, the coach or the runner or the podcaster. So with that in mind, I thought we would spend a bit of time today and I would ask you some questions about, I don't know, all the experiences in your life that have shaped who you are. So,
sounds good.
Want to get started?
Yes, yeah. I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know what you're going to ask, but we'll see how it goes, shall we?
Yeah, no.
I've got my glass of wine to give me a little bit of Dutch courage, so I'll have a sip.
Yeah, no.
And we'll get started, shall we?
Yeah, let's get started. So I thought we would go back to your childhood because you obviously have an accent.
Yes.
So I was wondering whether you would share a little bit about, where you grew up, your childhood, what life was like back in the
olden days,
70s, 80s, yeah, in the olden days, before the pandemic.
That's right. The good old days.
The good old days.
Yes.
So, yeah, tell us a bit about that.
All right. Well, I was born in Glasgow in Scotland, and my dad was Scottish and my mum was German, and my mum didn't like living in Scotland. She said the weather was too dreary and depressing, and she didn't want to live there anymore. So we were there for 6 months, and we went to Germany while my dad looked for another job. And he happened to find one in Australia where they needed some chemical engineers. And we were the classic 10-pound poms who came out. And we came to Melbourne because my dad got a job at Swinburne University. And we lived in Hawthorn at first, and then we moved to Balwyn. And I was only one when we came to Australia. So basically I've lived here all my life. And my accent is more due to, living with my parents, obviously, because my dad had quite a strong Scottish accent. Obviously, my mum had a German accent, which I didn't pick up. But they also lived in Canada before I was born. So my sister's probably got a little bit of a Canadian accent, which I probably picked up too. So I just grew up in Balwyn and lived my teenage years there and that sort of thing. And Balwyn was a great spot to live. It was, big wide streets. You just go out and ride your bikes on the road and play sport on the road and skateboard. And, those were the days with no helmets or anything like that. And we'd go and play down the creek, and your parents didn't know where you were, and you'd be gone all day. And we'd be just out walking and riding all day.
Yeah, yes. No, it sounds very much like my childhood as well, which was, it was a great way to live, wasn't it?
I
because
think
you could
so.
you had that freedom to go and do things.
Yeah.
And today, not so much. So, so growing up, were you a sporty kid?
I was definitely not a sporty kid. I was a classic nerd, bookworm, and I loved nothing better than reading. In fact, I once had one of the neighbours tell me she had an absolute heart attack because I used to read my book walking home from school, and I was reading and I just walked straight across the road, and she said cars were swerving to miss me, and she's looking out the window, and I just kept reading, walked straight across the road and kept going, didn't even notice. Another time I was walking home from school reading my book and I walked straight into a pole. So that was me. I just read and read and read. That's what I love to do. Sport, I was crap at sport.
Yeah.
So,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because you hear so many people that are athletic later in life as adults say how they weren't particularly sporty or didn't get chosen for teams in their early years. So when do you reckon you started to find your interests? When did sport start to become a little bit more appealing?
Well, certainly in high school it wasn't. I also became very short-sighted in grade 4, and then I refused to wear glasses, so I couldn't see the ball or anything like that. I was that kid that would try to catch the ball and was 2 feet away. So yes, I was last picked for every team, and even the people who picked me last still didn't want me, of course. And then I got contact lenses when I was 16, which was a complete game changer for me because suddenly I could see. But then I didn't really get into any kind of sport until I was about 19, I would say. I went to see someone go mountain biking, a friend of the boyfriend that I was with at the time. One of his friends was mountain biking, and I thought, oh, that looks like fun. So I just went and gave mountain biking a crack. And I was terrible at it when I started, like plumb last in every race because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I can still remember in my first race, I couldn't work out how to ride the mountain bike and have a drink. So I had to stop and drink. And this guy rode past me going, you're meant to ride and drink. You're not meant to stop. So, and by the time I finished that race, everyone had packed up and gone home, and I was the absolute last person. But for that, I won a Guts and Determination trophy at the end of the season. So,
Oh, wow. So how long did you do the mountain biking for? Like, was it a long-term thing or just?
Well, I did it. So from when I was about 19 till I don't know, I was probably about 24 or so, and then I had a fall. I was out training one day just by myself, and I came to this rocky hill, and I was trying to get faster on downhill. So I said to myself, right, what I'm going to do is, because normally when you're riding, you have 2 fingers on the brakes, and I said, I'm just going to take my fingers completely off the brakes and just go hell for leather down this hill. Just hold on to the handles, no brakes, nothing. Yeah, big mistake.
Wow.
I hit something. I think there was a rock. I went over the handlebars, and I remember as I'm going through the air, time slowed down, and I remember thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a wheelchair job for sure. And I landed, and it wasn't a wheelchair job, mainly because the camelback on my back exploded on impact. So that took the force. I was on my own. No, this was pre-mobile phones. So I picked up the bike and I managed to walk out. I couldn't lift my legs up to get over the bike, but I was getting bored walking, so I kind of had to slide the bike along the ground up between my legs, and I went down the hill. I went to a neighbour's house, and they took me to an X-ray place, and I remember when I went there, the X-ray people were like, I said, I've hurt myself, and she's like, oh, don't be ridiculous, you walked in here, you're fine. I said, I can't take my shoes off, it really hurts. And she's like, well, I'm not taking them off for you, you can do it yourself. I went in and got the X-ray, and when I came back out, she was running around me. Hey, I'll help you. I'll put your shoes on. I'll do this for you, that for you, because I'd fractured a vertebrae and dislocated my hips, and yeah. So after that, I believe it or not, I actually raced like 2 or 3 weeks later. I just wore a brace and raced because God knows I wasn't going to give up on my racing, but I just my heart wasn't in it anymore. Once you become fearful, you can't do it anymore. And so I kept training for probably another year, but my heart wasn't in it.
Yeah. And it's one of those sports where it's an adrenaline sport, isn't it?
That's right.
And but it requires you to take risks, I guess, doesn't it?
It does. And which was what I was trying to do, as I was trying to get faster, and because to be competitive, you have to be like that. And once you feel the fear, you end up just going on the brakes all the way around the course, and it's and it's not fun. It becomes frightening.
Yeah. So what was the training like? Were you really intense about the training, or was
it just when I look back now, I was seriously overtraining, really badly. I didn't fully understand enough about training. I certainly didn't know anything about tapering. I used to train right up until the day before a race, and then I couldn't work out why I was exhausted. And I overtrained.
Yeah.
So,
and was there obviously it's not like now where we have just a plethora of online tips and coaching. So how did you know how to train for mountain bike riding back then?
I didn't know. I would just go for rides with friends. I eventually made friends with this guy, Scott, and he'd been an Olympian. He'd won a silver medal in the Keirin. He started coaching me because he also got into mountain biking. And, he gave me, he wasn't really coaching me. He was just giving me tips and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And one of his main tips was when I did a speed session, if I didn't vomit at the end, I wasn't working hard enough. So I never vomited, so I never felt like I worked hard enough. But even then, and then he moved away. So, and once again, there was no online back then. So I just, fudged around and did what I thought. And I always did okay. I ended up being sponsored, and I was always, podiuming, I don't know how to say that, fairly regularly and that sort of thing. So I had the natural fitness in that, because also as I grew up, my parents being European, we didn't do normal sports. So that's another reason I wasn't sporty. We would go away on the weekend up to Mount Buller and hike in the backcountry off trail for the weekend. That was our weekends. That was my summer holidays, when we weren't involved in other things. So I had a lot of endurance from just being out hiking all day long, much to my dismay. But that's what I used to do. So I had that. And so I guess that kind of got me through a lot of those races.
Yeah, well, I guess, if that's what you had growing up, there's a lot of strength that you would have developed with that, a lot of physical and mental strength just from hiking, as a child. And so even though it's not an organised sport, it's definitely going to, hold you in good stead when you start to do something like mountain bike riding.
Yeah, that's right.
So after the mountain bike riding, am I right in that you did some bodybuilding for a while?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah, so when the kids were little and I wanted to do something, I did bodybuilding because the kids, I could put them in the gym crèche, and I could work out for, 45 minutes to an hour. And so I did, it was figure bodybuilding. So not the real big muscles, the sort of the in-between. It sort of goes sports model, figure, and then full on bodybuilding. So I was doing the figure. Yeah. And it was good. Yeah.
Keep going.
It was good because it was something to do. And I'm naturally sort of, I can build muscle relatively well. So yeah.
Because I'm fairly certain I've seen a photo. It must be on one of your social media platforms, and you looked like a bodybuilder. Not like you said, not like a huge bodybuilder, but there were muscles and like that's a big change from mountain bike riding, isn't it? Because it's gone from adrenaline cardio to I imagine bodybuilding, is it a really strict sort of regime?
Oh my God, it was so strict. The food was strict. There was certainly no drinking wine, I can tell you that right now. And it was eating all these horrible foods. I mean, horrible as in boring. Like I would have some carbs at breakfast, but after that, no carbs ever during the day. And it was a very antisocial diet because I couldn't go out with people because I couldn't eat any of the food basically. And it was hard, but I knew I wasn't going to do it forever. And then like before the comp, you would have to like for the 6 days before the comp, so 6 or 7 days out, 7 days out, you drink 1 litre, the next day 2 litres, 3 litres, 4 litres, 5 litres, till you had to drink 6 litres of water, and then the next day nothing. And that would make you suddenly everything suck in so that your veins would pop out more and your abs would stick out more and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, it was full on, like you were doing competitions.
Oh, yeah, I competed. And then when I eventually gave it up was just before the last competition, doing all that with the water, and I was getting kidney pains. So I thought, this is so bad for my body that I'm not going to do it anymore, and it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Wow. That's because that's not your traditional sport. That's not netball, is it? It's
no. And I had to wear this teeny tiny itty bitty bikini and then do this posing dance to music on the stage by myself, which is it was.
You don't have any old video clips of that you could
share?
No
videos, thank God for that. But I do have photos, but they're a little bit. Oh my God, I'm so orange, and yet, and to get the tan on, I had to go to a girlfriend's place, and she got, this was in the days, I suppose, I don't know, she had like a roller brush from when you paint the house, and she would dip it into the tan and roller me with the fake tan, and I was standing there in her living room while her family's banned while she's rollering me with fake tan.
Oh, that's so funny. And again, totally different now because you can just go and get a spray tan anywhere, can't
That's right, exactly. Yeah. So, but she didn't do my face. So I've got this orange.
You were white.
It was a very attractive look.
I think you need to share one of those photos on your Instagram just so that everyone can.
Well, I'll dig one up and I'll dig up the least horrible one. And put it up.
So there's a bit of a pattern. Like you weren't just mountain bike riding for fun. You weren't bodybuilding for fun. Like there was serious competitions with both. Yeah. So was it after the bodybuilding that? How did you land in the ultra running world? How did you get into that space?
Well, so I finished with the bodybuilding, and then I wanted to do something to keep fit and not put on weight, because to be honest, I love my food and I love my drinks of wine and that sort of stuff. So I wanted to do something, but, I felt like I couldn't afford to go to a gym and that sort of stuff. So I thought, I'll take up running. And at first it was just, I lived up in the hills. I lived on a couple of acres up in the hills. So when I say I ran around the block, that was probably quite hilly, and it was, I don't know, a few K anyway. And so I sort of started that, and then I did end up joining a gym, and I would just run on the treadmill and that sort of thing. And I remember still and I was probably still only doing just a few K. The first time I did this loop with some of the gym people, it was probably 5 or 6K. And I was wearing my board shorts and just some old T-shirt and some crappy runners, I don't know. But I thought when I finished that, I was like, oh my God, I just ran 6K. I thought I was so awesome.
Looking like Courtney Dauwalter as you did it in the book.
Like a really bad version, yeah. Because they were board shorts that didn't really stretch, so it was a little bit uncomfortable. But then I started just entering, you know, all the 10K races and all that. And I just remember one race, I think it was like Run to the G, and I'm doing it and there's people everywhere, and I was trying to get through. And then once I got into a rhythm, I was like, this feels right. And I just felt this feels right. This is what my body was designed to do, is to run. And that's when I was like, find it. You know, I finally found what I was enjoyed and what my body was good at.
Yeah. And so that transition to trail running, when did that occur? Because that's like a natural progression, because you've done the hiking.
Yes, that's right. And also the mountain biking. So I always sort of ran up the trails because I lived on the trails. I used to have to drive to get down to the roads to run. And so what happened was my first marathon was going to be Melbourne, but then I got injured. I got ITB syndrome, whatever, and couldn't run for like 6 months or something, because of course back then I was really cautious, and if I was injured, oh my God, I wouldn't run. No, I'd have just run through that, you know. So then my first marathon was the Great Ocean Road Marathon. So I did that. And then I did it again the following year, and I came like 3rd or 2nd or something. And
wow.
I know, I was pretty amazed too. And then I met Peter Mitchell, who's from the Dandenong Trails Runners. And he was like, I can help you to get faster. So he started coaching me for Gold Coast to do a sub 3 hour marathon. And of course we would do trail runs. And then as part of that, part of the training, we decided I would do 6-foot track, because I'd always wanted to do that after reading about it. So that was in March, and Gold Coast was going to be in July. So I just did 6-foot track as part of my training, and I ended up winning it. And I just loved it. And from winning it, I qualified for the World Long Distance Mountain Running Championships in Switzerland. And so then I went and did Gold Coast, and I got my sub 3 hour marathon, but it was so horrible and painful and boring and hideous. All I thought is, I don't ever want to do a road marathon again. I loved 6-foot track. I love the mountains. All I want to do is mountains and trail. Yeah. So then I went over to Switzerland and did that. And oh my God, that was just so amazing. Such an awesome experience. So yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like to win 6 foot is huge. Like
I honestly, I went there and I'd been looking at it. I used to look at it on the website with a friend from gym and just go, oh, that'd be awesome to do. I thought that was so far above me. Like, you know, I was nowhere near a good enough runner for that. And I just went along and did it. Like I said, I was in a training block. I was not peaking for that. But, you know, when you kind of don't know, you don't know. You just go out and you just do it, you know. Yeah. And I just went out and, And I hadn't had kids that long before. And I don't know about you, but for me, the pain of having children was so hideous that by comparison, running was nothing.
Well, there's that whole mentality of, you know, everything will end at some point, won't it? You know, it's going to end eventually, and we're choosing to be out there. No one's making us be out there. So that's right. We can make it as painful or as painless as we want, but a lot of the time, I think, you know, if you don't have that weight of expectation on your shoulders, sometimes the performance is so much better, isn't it?
I honestly believe that. And any time I've gone into a race where people have said, oh, Isabel's a contender, I tend not to do so well.
Yeah, because you know, we get all caught up in our head, don't we? And it's we need to manage our mind.
Yeah.
That's going to be the biggest strength in any sort of competition, is how you manage your mind. And
Definitely.
so if there's no expectation, you know,
Yep.
you can just perform at your best. But having said all of that, you had to still have natural running ability,
Yeah.
endurance, strength and speed. And I'm wondering, you know, you look back and so you've got this hiking background as a
Yep.
child, followed by all of the strength and endurance that you would have developed as a mountain bike rider,
Yeah.
and then even more strength and discipline, because
Yeah.
discipline would have been huge as a bodybuilder.
Oh, definitely.
So,
Yeah.
you know, are there other things? What do you think you've you know, bringing into ultra running some of these things in the past? You know, what are some of those other things that you've brought in?
Well, I mean, I came from a very sort of strict European family. My mother was German, and if anyone knows anything about Germans, they're very strict and to the point and hard workers and that sort of thing. So I was brought up to not be a complainer and not be a whinger kind of thing. And I was also brought up in a different religion where we would get drilled on how to be mentally tough, which involved, you know, doing certain, basically, so I was brought up in Scientology, and like one of the drills we had was called bull baiting. And I used to have to do this when I was in primary school, and we would have to sit opposite another child because we would do it with children. And in bull baiting, what do you do to a bull? You bait it, you tease it. So we would have to say mean and unkind and horrible things to the other person, and they would not be allowed to react. So someone would have to say horrible things to me, and I would have to only say, thank you, do fish swim? And they would say, and that was all I was allowed to say. Yeah, I know, don't ask me why. And they would say, you know, whatever, horrible things, you know, trying to get a reaction, trying to make you upset, or they would say things to try to make you laugh, or whatever it was, or they'd pretend to, you know, do stuff to you, and you'd have to go and you'd have to sit still. And this could go on for hours. Thank you, do fish swim? And just no reaction. And then we had heaps of other kinds of different drills as well, and that sort of stuff. And I learnt to really control my emotions and control my reactions. And that is probably, a lot of people say that I can, you know, in a race, oh, you're a machine, whatever, because you just keep going and you have no reaction to it. Well, I guess that's been a trained behavior since childhood.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's fascinating. Like, I didn't know any of that, but it makes sense that you've had training. Your brain's had training, just like and the brain is a muscle. It's like any other part of the body, you know. So you've had this training, the same way, I guess, that athletes train their body. And that's where, you know, because you've been successful as a mountain bike rider, you've been successful as a bodybuilder, and then had, you know, this almost instant success as a runner as well. But it's your natural physical skill and training there, but coupled with this sort of, you know, mental strength that a lot of people don't have, you know.
Yeah, that's right. Because I can sort of switch off my brain to the pain that I'm feeling because I'm practiced at that.
Yeah. Wow. That's really, fascinating. So, out of the sports that you've done, because you have been successful, you alluded before to that you felt that once you found ultra running, that was where you went.
Well, that was more sort of running. Then even the World Long Distance Mountain Range Championships was only 42 k's distance. Just give me a second. I'm just going to turn on the lights. It's getting dark. There we go. Sorry. Then I guess the Great Ocean Road was basically an ultra. Then what I consider my first proper ultra, I went and did Kepler, and I hated it. So at first I thought, I'm never going to do ultras. I actually ended up coming fifth in that, fifth female, but I hated every moment, or not every moment, just the last half. And then for some reason I decided to do UTA. I think started to do some 50Ks and that sort of stuff. And I actually trained properly for it and ate, like during Kepler, I didn't really eat the proper foods and, that sort of stuff. I didn't know what I was doing, basically. So then, I did some more. I still remember signing up for UTA. It was at recess at school because I used to be a teacher, and I got online and entered it and just freaked out, like, oh my God, I'm going to the teacher that I worked with. Oh my God, what have I done? How can I possibly run 100 kilometers? And I remember doing a lot of panic training for that one. But once again, when I did that, and I came seventh in that, it just felt right. It still felt horrible at the end because it always does, but it just felt right. Something about going those really long distances really suits me.
Yeah. So is there anyone throughout, with the ultra running, have you had anyone sort of coach you or mentor you? How did you start to learn how to train properly to be an ultra runner?
Basically, in my mind, certainly for 100K and anything under, all you really need to do is marathon training. And for the 100K, maybe a few, longer runs. So that's basically what I did. Was very similar to marathon training, and then which I'd learned a lot of that through Peter Mitchell. He was a great help. He wasn't still coaching me at that stage because I was going on to ultras and that sort of stuff. And I don't know, I just made it up from all my experiences of what I'd been through with the running and the mountain biking and everything. And I remember I had some hamstring issues before North Face, and then or UTA now, and I remember thinking, I'll do my speed work uphill because then it won't hurt my hamstrings. And about 2 years later, I was reading in a book that's what you do, kind of thing. So I kind of just sort of naturally worked it out, and it obviously worked because I was doing okay, and just loving it, and also the community of people. Like, I just met such lovely people, like you.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. And do you find that, within the ultra running world, or any, I guess, it doesn't matter what distance it is, but you do make some fantastic connections with people because you'll go on training runs with them and have, conversations over, hours if they're long training runs. Even in the middle of races. I mean, you were up the pointy end. I know when I started trail running, I would be in the middle of the pack, so I would be having a great time because I'd be chatting to whoever came along on the trail next to me. So there's a real camaraderie in trail running.
Yes, definitely.
That you don't necessarily get in a road marathon. Would you agree?
Oh, in marathons, you don't talk to anybody. And I don't know if people know my running style. They probably do. They know that I tend to start off up the back, and because my body just takes a while to warm up, and I slowly warm up and move through the pack. So I talk to everybody in the entire race. It's awesome. Like, I talk with the people up the back and slowly move up and just talk to new people the whole way. And it's, like you say, it's so much fun. And I think in ultra, because it is slightly slower pace, you are able to talk to people. When I was racing marathons, I wouldn't have been able to speak.
No. And I guess the same in bodybuilding and mountain bike riding. You there's not that opportunity where there is, like you said, in ultra running, you're out there for a long time, and the person next to you is probably hurting just as much as you are, so you might as well, be in the pain cave together.
Exactly.
And make the time go, because you can find that another 20 kilometres pass just by running alongside someone else,
like at the end of that UTA race, that first one I did, I was suffering and sooking and carrying on, And this guy came up and he encouraged me probably for the last 5 to 10 Ks. I can't remember. He was like, come on, you can do it. And he got me through because then I got the silver buckle or something. And even as we came up to the finish line, we were together. He goes, no, you go first in front of me. And it was just, I felt like that was I still don't know who he was, but I still remember that on how nice he was. He got me through those last 5 to 10 Ks. And even then he said, no, you crossed the finish line before me. I just think you only get to meet those kind of people in ultra running. Like I've never met people that,
Yeah, I agree. I remember the first trail run I did was the Yangs 30K.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to climb the peak
yes,
just
that's
once.
right.
So I'm going up the stairs, and all the 50K and 80K runners who had to do it a couple of times are coming down, and I'm in awe of them. Yeah. I've never seen anyone run that far before. So I'm like going, oh, well done, you know, great job. And they're saying back to me, great job. And like I was just gobsmacked that these awesome runners that could run 50 or 80 kilometres were encouraging the people that were running the shorter distances. Like it just felt really, like you said, it felt right. It felt like a good fit. So that's the thing I love about the sport. So would you say, with your sporting background, with your life, would you say you're a risk taker or do you play it safe?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I'm a risk taker. I don't know. No, I don't think so. I guess it's from my German background. I'm very planned and organized and know exactly what I'm getting into. So although something may look risky, it's not, because I have, made sure to the nth degree that I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess the reason I ask is because I'm just going to sort of shift across to you. You mentioned before that you're a qualified school teacher, which is a very important and very challenging profession to be in. And I take it you probably have done that for a long time, yeah? When did you become a teacher?
Oh, years ago, like, I don't know, I've probably been teaching for 18 years, 17 years. I'm only down to 1 day a week at the moment, but yeah.
So, because the reason I sort of brought it up was that you took the, I don't know whether it's risky, but a rather big step in doing a teacher exchange a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I wondered whether you would share what that experience was like.
See, that's funny. I remember before I went, people were saying to me, oh my God, you're so brave. And I'm thinking, what? How am I brave? Like, to me, it didn't feel like I was being brave. It just felt like I was doing something. And I guess that comes from my parents. Like my dad, he worked in India, he worked in Canada, he worked in Germany, he worked in Scotland, he worked all over the world. So to me, it seemed perfectly natural and normal to go and work somewhere else and to live in another country. So to me, it didn't feel risky. But once I got there, I kind of understood a little bit more what they were talking about, because it was really hard. And I thought, going to Canada, very similar culture, speak the same language. How hard can it be? It'll just be like moving town. But even moving town's hard, going somewhere, especially the other side of the world, where you don't know anybody. I had to go there in the middle of winter. It was just before New Year's Eve. So snow, driving on the other side of the road in snow. So learning how to drive on the other side of the road in snow. Not many daylight hours. So I was basically driving in the dark on the wrong side of the road in snow. And it was really scary. And then I've always been, believe it or not, really, really shy and find making friends difficult. And to be honest, part of the reason I went to Canada was to try and get rid of that. That was in 2018. So I had separated from my husband in 2015, got divorced in 2016. And I was just feeling crap about life. Like I was also in a rut, and that basically all my life was running, working. That's it, running, working. And there was nothing more. And I thought, this is it for the rest of my life. And how depressing is that? So I thought, I've got to break that rut, go and do something different. So that's part of the reason I went too. And also so many memories, because I was living in very much the same area of when I was married, and so many memories, and it was really, really hard for me. So I thought I just need a complete change. Unfortunately, as you may be aware, and I'm sure the listeners are too, you can't run away from your problems. They tend to follow you, which they did, you know. So, but in saying that, it was still awesome, and it really taught me to get out of my comfort zone. I was totally out of my comfort zone. And so I ended up, you know, joining a trail running group, and I had to talk to people and I had to make friends. And I still remember one day I joined this Lululemon running group that would meet in the downtown, and we would finish at this place to have coffee, and everyone was getting coffee and we're talking, and I went inside to pick up mine because it was ready. I came back out and everyone was in groups talking, and I thought, I'm just going to stand there like a gooseberry next to them, or I'm going to have to make myself walk up to a group and talk. And I'm like, okay, Isabel, you can do this. And I just sort of came into the group and just started talking, joined in, and it was fine. And it was like, oh my God, I can do it. And it's fine.
Yeah.
And people like me and want to talk to me. And it was, it really grew my confidence doing that, and just doing so many different things. You know, I drove from Calgary to Edmonton in a snowstorm in a car that was completely unroadworthy, and it was an unforecast snowstorm that, oh my God, it was so dangerous. And I was pretty much crying with my daughter in the car the whole way. She had to help me steer, because every time a semi would go past me, the steering wheel would move. The headlights didn't work, so we couldn't actually see. But you couldn't pull over, because if we pulled over, we would have got hit by a car, or we would have actually frozen to death. So we had to keep driving, because on this highway, there were no towns, there were nowhere to stop. So we did this for like 5 or 6 hours, me crying, her helping me steer, and it was just the world's biggest nightmare. But you know what? I did it, or we did it, and even that made me mentally stronger, and just like, God, if I can do that, I can do anything, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So there was so many experiences, and it was just, and I ended up making some really good friends, and so many friends, and I just, such awesome people over in Canada, that I was actually so sad to leave. I didn't want to leave. I would have quite happily stayed.
And I can remember when you were over there, I would see these amazing pictures on Instagram. It was like, you know, I just been out for my morning run, and there's this like backdrop of Canadian mountains, and I mean, it just looked so picturesque. But I think, you know, it was, like you said, it was a really brave thing to do, because you basically leave the comfort and security of everything that you know, and you go to a place where you don't know anyone, and everyone's already got their groups. Everyone's already got the people they run with.
And at our age,
it's hard to break in.
Yeah, at our age, it's hard to break in. And you also have to remember, I'd gone straight from living with my parents to living with my husband. So this was my first time on my own. And you know, and I'd just been living for a year or a bit on my own, which that was hard enough. And then to completely uproot, I'd never traveled on my own, never done anything grown up on my own. And so it was, you know, it was tough, but it was so worthwhile. It was, you know, and doing the tough things. No one remembers, you know, the easy things, the things that come easily. They don't make great stories. The tough things are what make great stories, you know. And
and it's the same in races, isn't it? You know, like we all love the race where everything goes right and we have a terrific race, but we actually learn more about ourselves when we have things go wrong, don't we?
Exactly. Oh yeah. So luckily I've had many, many learning experiences in my life, but you know,
as we all have.
Yeah, that's it. You know, I'm no Robinson Crusoe here. Yeah. So, you know, but honestly, if anyone ever has an opportunity to go and live in another country, even if it's just for a year, just take it, because it's only 1 year of your life. Like, big deal. But it was like, so, oh my God, I seriously, I could go and live in Canada tomorrow quite happily, because the mountains are great. And once I got, although the culture is very much the same, it is a little bit different. It is different. they don't make friends as easily as they do here, but when they do make friends, it's less superficial, right?
Mm.
Australians make superficial friends easier. The Canadians, it takes a bit longer, but they're more deeper friendships. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah.
yeah. So it appeared that I wasn't making friends to me quickly at first, but then I realized the friends that I did make were really good friends and have stood the test of time. Even though I've only known them for a little time, I'm still friends with them and in contact with them.
Mm.
So, you know, it was a different culture, and there was some getting used to a different culture, even though very similar. And it also gave me a greater insight to my mother, you know, coming from Germany to Australia, completely different culture. She doesn't speak the language, you know, and it gave me a better insight into my own parents and how difficult it was for them, and makes me understand them more of why they, say, for instance, got into Scientology, which I always wish they hadn't. But, you know, at least that was a support network for them, you know, so it gave me a better understanding and helped me look back more positively, you know, on those aspects of my life.
Yeah. Well, and that was going to be one of my questions. What did you learn about yourself? And I mean, you've already shared that. Like, you know, you obviously learn a lot about your own resilience, but
Yeah.
then to have that, I guess the privilege of learning about your parents a little bit more, because we, you know, we don't always understand why our parents do what they do or behave the way they do, and then to, you know, to be able to get a little bit of insight into what it would have been like to move to another country,
Yeah.
and then add in that language barrier, you know, that would have been a huge challenge as well.
Yeah. And for my mum, you know, like being German, like when we came to Australia, the Australians weren't allowed to play with us, you know.
Mm.
My mum would
Oh.
send us kids out into the street, and all the other mums would bring their kids back in, because we were the, you know, the weirdo Germans, and also because the Second World War wasn't that far in the past, you know, people didn't want to associate with a German. And I used to get a lot of anti-Germanic issues with people, and, you know, go home to your own country sort of stuff. So, you know, and that was me, basically an Australian. So I can't imagine what it was like for her. She would have found it impossible to make friends. So it would have been really
Yes.
hard.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that that sort of stuff was happening back in the 70s and the 80s,
Yeah,
you know, but it was.
it was.
And again, that's something that, you know, people wouldn't realise would be happening to you, because, as you
Yeah,
said, you're essentially Australian. You're only one when you moved here.
that's right.
Um,
Yeah,
so, and all of those experiences that we have when we're really young, they do shape who
yes.
and what we become, don't they? So,
Yeah, definitely.
so I wonder, with that exchange, you know, you obviously came back to Australia
Mm.
and you returned. You went back to work.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the familiarity of being back, you know, in the stable, secure life that you
No,
had, or was there something missing?
no, just I had a bit of a breakdown, to be honest. um, you know, because it was like I was back to that rut. It was back to the rut, and
Mm.
nothing had changed. And it was like, oh my God, I might as well have not gone. And and I felt like I had changed, but when I came back, nothing here had changed, and everything was
Mm.
the same. But I was like a different person, and I couldn't fit in. And I was just, and they had warned us about all of this sort of stuff happening, but I was like, yeah, no, I'll be right. I'm fine. I'm strong. Yeah, famous last words. So I ended up having to take 3 months off work to,
Mm.
you know, I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. I was a mess. So, and once again, that running is what got me through, you know. Every time I've hit a difficult patch in my life, it's been the running that has got me through.
Mm.
And because, of course, my mother also died while I was in Canada.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
you know, I had to come back to see her in palliative care. I went back to Canada 2 or 3 days later. I got the phone call. I'm driving home from work, and my sister's like, pull over, you need to pull over. Mum's just died like 5 minutes ago. And then I was back on a plane. to go back to Australia. And then when I come back to Australia, and it's like, because my mum only lived 5 minutes from me, and it was like, but last time I was here, my mum was alive, and the last time I lived here, and it just was really weird. And running in the area where sometimes, I'd go running and I'd see my mum out walking on the bike path and that sort of stuff, and it was just really hard for me to mentally grapple with that, and that everything was the same, but I had changed so much, and people expected me to be the same, but I was a completely different person, and it just was really like a mind, whatever, the word I'm saying.
Yeah.
And
Yes, I do.
and so I just had really a lot of trouble coping with that, and that was just before Barclay, so which was tough because it made my preparation for Barclay tough. But what doesn't kill us what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, as they say. And once again, I think last year was I think I've become a lot tougher since last year.
Yeah. And so I mean, you're dealing with that adjustment of returning from this fantastic trip that, it took a while to adjust to when you got there, but then once you had adjusted to it, you really loved it.
Didn't want to leave.
You come back, you've got this, but then also adjusting, almost like a delayed grieving, isn't it?
Yes, it was definitely a delayed grieving. Yeah. It was because when I went back to Canada after my mum died, it was like, oh, everything's back to normal, and it was weird. So definitely a delayed grieving.
So do you feel that, because, then obviously that was 2019, which was, a tough year by the sounds of it.
Yeah, so I thought 2020 is going to be my year. 2020 is going to be this awesome year.
And then some might say...
Hang on a second, you're cutting out. What was that? Can you ask that again?
Yeah, so 2020, you did something that some would say was risky, some would say was brave, but you took a leap of faith, and, you decided to maybe jump into you're opening your own business.
Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the decision-making process that went on there for what you started this year?
So last year I was feeling I'm in this rut again. It's just work, sleep, run, work, sleep, run. And I was back there. So I thought, oh my God, and after talking with a few friends and a guy who's done very similar in South Australia, Daniel Ferrugia, he gave up teaching to go into podcasting and coaching and that sort of stuff. And, and I listened to what he'd done. And so I thought, oh, bugger it, I'm done with this. I'd got a little bit of inheritance from my mum. Mind you, I'd have much rather not received it, and she lived to spend it all. But, so I was in a position financially where, although I still have a mortgage, it wasn't as big as it was. So I could afford to give up teaching and I decided to do PTing because I'm a PT and my running coaching. And, I, on a whim, applied for one PT job at a gym. I got it. So that was awesome, which was across 2 gyms. And through that gym, I got a job PTing at another studio. And, life was great. I was suddenly doing my passion, which was, all this sort of stuff. And, as much as I loved teaching, it was never really a passion. I got into teaching because I knew I wanted to have children. I was going to get married. I knew I wanted to have children. I thought teaching, because once again, being a very pragmatic German-based person, organised. All right, I had my whole life mapped out, like it was until the day I die. That's why, the marriage ending was, what the heck, it was a complete change of plan. But I was going to teach because that suited having children. And I would be home for them in the holidays because I didn't want to have to farm my kids out on holidays. They could come to school with me. I'd see them. And it all worked. That was exactly what happened. But then once the kids grew up, I was like, oh, now what? And now it's time for me. So I'll get into the PTing and doing all that sort of stuff. And, and then COVID.
Well, yeah. So, it's leaving the security, the stability of a full-time paid position to open your own business is a risk for anyone. And then to do it in the middle of a pandemic, well, it's it's timing, isn't it?
I swear to God, it's like the story of my life.
But you're not going to get a true sense of how successful it's going to be.
No, that's right.
At the moment, because gyms aren't open, people have no races to train for, or not many of them do anyway.
Yeah.
So, but I have no doubt. Like, you have incredible drive, determination, discipline. Like, we've heard all of those attributes that you've had that have made you successful in your sporting life.
Yeah.
So if you have those attributes as an athlete, if they transfer over into your business life, running your own business, then that's going to be successful as well.
Yeah.
So it's just, we have to get out of the pandemic, don't we?
Yeah, look, and that's it. And that's why I'm not too stressed, I've still got clients to coach for the business. I've still got PT clients that I do one-on-ones with on FaceTime. I do online classes, and it's actually taught me a lot about adapting and that old word, that pivoting, that's getting overused. But seriously, I have really had to learn to adapt, and it's actually been really good for me. And once again, it's really pushed me out of my comfort zone, which has been great, because I've really honed my skills of PTing, because to PT over a mobile phone on FaceTime is way harder. Trying to teach form in that medium means you have to be much more precise and much more sure about what you're doing. So it's really honed my skills in that regard. And it's also taught me that, I can survive on way less money than I ever thought was possible. And that, and you do survive, you get by. Admittedly, there's nothing to do, nowhere to go, nothing to spend your money on, but, other than wine.
Yeah.
But, and also, I think it's also taught me to appreciate the human connections that I have, to appreciate them so much more. Like, I just think it just, it's still taught me a lot, and a lot that I think I will still benefit from.
Yeah. I think, there's got to be things that we take out of this whole situation that, that are positives, and we've all got to think a little bit more flexibly at the moment. And as humans, by nature, we like to be in control. And so when we're not in control, that's when we start to, get that sense of overwhelm, or for some people it's anxiety, but, for some people it's anger. Everyone reacts differently. But whether it's adapt, pivot, flexible, whatever term you want to use, we've all had to adjust. And the ones that have been able to adapt as you have, and say, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to do it this way, I'm going to do it this way, are still being successful, just differently than I guess you had it mapped out at the beginning of the year. So I'm conscious of the time, and
I just saw that. Wow.
I've still got so many questions. Like, I had all these questions I wanted to ask you about resilience and mindset, daily habits,
maybe
strategy.
we did talk about that. Maybe we should do a second one. So maybe we can talk about those more specific things. This has perhaps been more sort of a background story.
Yeah, this is a get to know Izzy, who is Izzy, and I think like a part 2 would be really really useful, so that, because I'm fascinated to learn more about this whole mental strength, and I know that your listeners will be too, because that's the gold when you're in a race. That's what gets you that little bit extra. So I was going to finish up with something that I do with my clients. So as you know, I'm a speech pathologist, and I like to do would you rather. So I've got 10 questions. You get 10 questions, and you just give a one-word answer. Would you rather, I think we already know some of the answers because you've alluded to them throughout the podcast, but would you rather trail or road running?
Trail, 100%. Sorry, that was 3 words. 4.
Chocolate or cheese?
Oh. Do I have to choose?
You do.
Cheese if it's really good cheese.
Okay. Movies or books?
Books.
Beer or wine?
Wine. Although I really got into beer in Canada. They have really good beer.
Yeah. Summer or winter?
To be honest, winter.
I thought you might say that. Money or happiness?
Happiness, 100%. That's not even don't have to think about that one.
Wonder Woman or Superman?
Wonder Woman. Always wanted to be her.
A personal maid or a personal chef?
What was the first one?
A personal maid or a personal chef?
Ooh, chef. Love my food.
A holiday at the beach or a holiday at the snow?
At the snow, because I can still run in the snow.
And the last one, a golden ticket to Western States or to UTMB?
UTMB. I love the mountains.
Very good. You did very well. So it wasn't that hard afterwards.
No, I was a bit nervous. I had to have an extra sip of wine just to get me through.
So thank you so much for letting me just steal the podcast and ask you lots of questions. It's been fascinating.
Thank you. And thank you for being kind to me.
All right. Well, I'm going to look forward to part 2.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Bye.